And what do you got? Anything interesting happening at the center upcoming?
We always have interesting things. You just caught me by surprise. I'll tell you, this is what I like is, and it's really not going to give you a good answer, but it's the truth. I'll go into these meetings with, and my colleagues and I will go into these meetings with our colleagues on the technology side. These folks work in our Center for Technology, Innovation, and Commercialization. And we'll meet with them. We usually meet with them once a month. We'll go through, well, what's your new technologies? What do you have on the table? And they'll tell us these fantastic ideas or something that Effectively is working on that, is going to blow everything away. And we get so excited. We say, oh, we can build such a great story around this. And at the last moment, they tell us, well, it's not patented yet. You're not allowed to say anything to anybody about it. And it's right, for a marketer who's always looking for the story and the angle, that, can drive a person crazy. Now, that being said, once things are at that patentable moment, once we own our intellectual property on it, it's fair game. One of the things I really like, and it's a very simple device, and some of our technologies are extremely simple but useful. This is called a single prong dual port nasal cannula. And so nasal cannulas are these tubes that go in both of your nostrils, and one delivers oxygen and the other takes carbon dioxide out. And when you're under anesthesia, it's really important to, have this work in the way it needs to. Well, there's a distinct problem that ocular surgeons face. And the problem is that if I'm, say, an ocular surgeon, I'm working on the left side of your face, it's really prohibitive to have a tube running across the left side of your face, which is what these these two tubes are. Well, we had a faculty member here, a clinician, who said, well, why don't I combine both of them in one tube so we can just run a single tube across the left side and the surgeon will have an unencumbered space to work on the right side. It's an extremely simple answer to a simple problem. And to me, that's the sort of beauty, especially in devices, that you can have a faculty member who has very distinct experience in experiencing the problem itself, have that, light bulb moment, and then partner with our group, and we'll help them convert that moment into a real prototype. So for me, that's one of my favorite technologies right now. We're actually building a bunch of prototypes, and we're getting ready for a conference where we're going to have all these prototypes in hand to show to people at this conference.
Now,
of course,
this is actually
everything. There's a digital campaign behind it.
Now, this is actually a very interesting, product as an agency to tackle, because this is what Vishal just explained is something that didn't exist before, right? And often people, let's say an organization has a new product or service they want to get out there, and the first question is, well, how do we get the word out? Where does search engine marketing, search engine optimization, social media come in? How do we get the word out about this exciting new product? Well, the fact of the matter is when you're creating a search engine strategy, how do you optimize something that doesn't yet exist, right? People they don't know to search for this type of invention or this type of a product. When we go to search, if we're looking for a dentist, we know we're looking for a dentist. If you're looking for a car, if you're looking for, some type of procedure, obviously you can create a search engine optimization strategy around that. But for a brand new type of product or service that's reaching the market, it requires a little something different. And that's where content marketing and social media and content amplification comes in. People go to Google usually because they're searching for something very specific. But if you have something brand new that you've got to get out to the market, you have to get a little bit more creative than that and actually, get this information in front of people that don't really know it exists. Isn't that right, Vishal?
Oh, I think without a doubt, that's a requirement. And it takes, I think another important thing to add is it takes patience. You can't expect, a story you told 6 months ago to convert in 6 months. And you can't say, well, hey, look, that story didn't convert. We're doing something wrong. We got to change everything. You have to have a little more patience. We have a story we did, I think, I can't even remember how long ago, but it was a pretty distinct time ago. And it's still getting readership, and we still believe that it has the potential to convert. And the respect of the time it takes, the respect that a story can live much longer than, that 3 weeks when you put your dollars behind it in LinkedIn and Facebook and, sent your X amount of emails out. You've got to have that patience but you also at the same time have to have a distinct strategy. So, when we work with AIS, a lot of times what we'll do is at the start of a project, we're defining what keyword space we want to try to own. And that's that longer term strategy when we can start to get, what Rand Fishkin over at Moz calls the 10X content. When we can start to own that space, we really get a value point and a value inflection that, we believe will convert through time, and we see converts through time.
And that's a good place for social media. We often compare social media to a cocktail party versus, take Google as a conference. People go to a conference with a very specific purpose in mind. They know why they're there. If you're going to the car show, the boat show, right? Software conference. But when you're on Facebook, you're there casually. But there is a place for that. So if you have a product like this, this may not be a consumer product per se, but for many organizations that are trying to get the word out about a new product or service to the general public, Facebook is a good platform for that. People, they go there to chat with their friends and then suddenly see a story about something that may appeal to them. One of the stories right now coming out of Wake Forest Innovations is about this diabetes testing for the African American community, and that's a unique challenge and opportunity because what we found is about 1/3 of African Americans are affected by this. I'll let Vishal, speak to this, but that's a perfect example of something that really needs to get out to the general public.
Yeah, and that's a dual-edged sword, I think, as well. And this is something very specific to marketing scientific discoveries. We have to depend upon real data and real information, but there's this variable that you have to deal with where you can't promise too much to people. And so there's, the conversation between scientists and scientists is one thing. They speak a very distinct language. But when you start to put out something saying, oh, here's an ideal new treatment for brain tumors, well, you're making a promise to the consumer who comes across that. And that's a dangerous promise to make for people who are, there's nothing more personal or scary than a serious disease or health problem. And it's a little bit off topic from where we were, but I think it's important to say when you're in healthcare marketing, you have a moral imperative to not make promises, to not overpromise, to not get consumers excited as you're trying to engage with your business audience. And I think that's really essential, is understanding the message in that way. So you probably won't see in most of our stories us ever saying this is the perfect, X. Or as a good friend and colleague of mine said, he was talking about the movie Elf, and he was talking about the scene where Will Ferrell goes into this, coffee shop, and there's a sign that says the greatest coffee in the world. And he comes in and he says, hey, I want to get the greatest coffee in the world. Well, of course it's not the greatest coffee in the world, because the greatest coffee in the world doesn't exist. And I think in the same way, we like to temper our stories a bit so that we're never promising the magic bullet cure for anything. Because if there's a magic bullet cure for anything, we'll never see that health problem again. And that's really key to understand within the space of science and health marketing.